Okay, so I got a fairly large book haul for everyone today. There's a little over 70 books here. Most of these I got locally. Me and the wife, we had a chance to go up to Glacier National Park and we stayed in one of these cabins you can reserve. And it's about a 3.5 hour drive for us. And on the way up, I got to hit some thrift stores and some bookstores that are kind of a little out of my normal range. And so found some really interesting things there. And then I got a big lot locally that I'll talk about in a minute. But let's just go ahead and start with what I found on the road trip. So first off, we stopped at this little thrift store in this little tiny town on Indian reservation here in Montana. And we were pretty excited. At first, it just looked like normal books, and my wife was kind of looking around for other stuff. I thought we found the book section, and in the back of the store, she found where they had all their science fiction stashed. And so I got one of these little small Ace paperbacks of Rex Gordon, Optima Minus X, and it was in pretty good shape. All these were $1 each. I also got a Ace Double, which I normally don't get. I'm not a big fan of collecting these, but I found it for $1, and one side is Eric Frank Russell, Sentinels of Space. And, I might actually read this one. The other side is four authors, and it's called The Ultimate Invader and Other Science Fiction by Eric Frank Russell, Mary Leinster, Frank B. Long, and Malcolm Jameson. So, like I said, I'm normally not a collector of the Ace Doubles, but when I find them for $1 and they're in pretty good shape, I'll go ahead and get them. Then I found a Frederick Brown. This is a really old one. It's called The Lights in the Sky Are Stars. And this is a Bantam 25-cent paperback that was also in pretty good condition. And it's funny, anytime I take these up to the counters, everyone has to stop and look at them and make comments because they're pretty cool. And the last one I found at this thrift store was Mary Leinster. It's just called Time Tunnel. And this one is a Pyramid Books edition, issued at 50 cents. And once again, it was in pretty good condition. And they had quite a few others that were beat up or newer, and I just kind of didn't want to steal all the good books in this little thrift store. Now, we went to another couple thrift stores in a town just up from there. I picked these up just because they were 50 cents each, and I didn't want to leave empty-handed after I went through the rack. So I got A Jungle of Stars by Jack L. Chalker, and mostly for that awesome cover there. And this is a Del Rey book here. It's in good condition. Then I got a Heinlein, The Menace from Earth. And this is like a later Bane reprint. Has a pretty cool cover though. And it just had one big crease on the spine. But these were 50 cents each, so that was a good deal. And then this next set, they were listed. We went to this thrift store and they had them all listed. All their paperbacks are supposed to be 25 cents. And I started just piling them up. There was a bunch of new books, like someone went there and unloaded. But then I ended up putting a bunch back, and then when we got up to the front, they were 50 cents each, so I paid $2 for these 4 books. I got this little series, this duology from Greg Bear. It's Quantico, so Mary Posa. I'll show you the back. They were basically like brand new. When I got back and looked these up, I don't know how good they are. And then Quantico. I can't remember which order. I think this one comes first, maybe. But they were, perfect condition. Vanguard Press. I got Cryptonomicon by Neil Stevenson. And just massive, massive book, but in like perfect condition. 50 cents for this thing. I have a giant trade paperback of this one, so I'll probably get rid of that. And then I got Blood Music by Greg Bear, and this isn't my favorite cover. All I had was a trade paperback, so this will replace that. I would eventually like to get the Ace paperback that has the little vial of blood on it. Okay, and then we went to a bookstore in Kalispell, and it was called Black Tail Mountain Books, and I'll put a picture of it here. I've been to some disorganized bookstores before, but this one took the cake. This was like, looking at the pictures ahead of time, I was most excited of all places to go. This was the place. I wanted to check it out. And it was like 95 degrees. They had no air conditioning. They had some fans around the store, but that was it. They price everything kind of, loosely based on the cover price. I poured through these, not only those really tall stacks you saw in the photo, but they had these bins just piled with books. And me and my wife kind of went through all of those. Managed to find 5 books, and I took them up to the guy. He must have been the owner. And he just grabbed him like this, and he looked at him, and he said $10. He didn't look at the prices or anything. He just threw out a price. So what I got was Heliconia Winter by Brian Aldiss, and this was the last mass market paperback I needed for this one to complete this trilogy of the Heliconia books. Got Alfred Bester, The Computer Connection. This is from Berkeley, and it was in pretty good shape. They had so many books that were just completely beat up, I think from people rummaging through the bins and whatnot. So I was kind of like looking for anything that even piqued my interest. A World Named Cleopatra by Poul Anderson. And this is 4 stories in it from Poul Anderson, Jack Dan, Michael Orgill, and George Zabrowski. So it's like 4 little novellas, and it had a pretty awesome cover. It is punched here, as you can see. And then Loris Janifer, Survivor. This was an author, I think I've been reading this Barry Malzberg book, Breakfast in Ruins, and he was talking about Janifer. And I never found anything from him, and so found that. And then Jack Williamson, Bright New Universe. Now the Surly owner, they also had in the front of their store, in the most disorganized way, it was like you had to play that game where you move all the tiles to make a picture, like a mosaic. And they had stacks and stacks and carts of hardbacks. And I mean, I tried to look through them, but you would have had to take everything apart, get to the back if you really wanted to go through it. And I asked them, I said, hey, do you know how much some of these book clubs are? Because they had some really nice looking book clubs. And the Surly owner, he says, yeah, I know how much they are. It's like, okay, can you help me out here? And he said $5 to $10 per book club book. So I just decided it wasn't worth my time to go through them. That was too much than I was willing to pay. But it was an interesting store. If you're ever in Kalispell, Montana, I would definitely go check it out. Hopefully it's not 95 degrees in there. Okay, and then I found someone locally. Apparently they had went and cleaned up I think it was maybe an estate sale, and just took gobs and gobs of science fiction. And he said he had hundreds of books. But by the time I found this guy, he was down to 73. So I bought 73 books for $73. And there was about 20 that I just didn't want. Like, there was a couple that were just destroyed beyond repair that I threw away. Some were duplicates, some were just in really bad condition, and I stuffed those in my closet. But I was left with about 50 books that I'm pretty happy with. There's a bunch of random ones, but when we get to the bottom of this stack, there's some really good ones. So this is The Secret of Home Peel and Other Strange Stories by Sax Rohmer. And this is like an Ace occult gothic. So I have a different section of my bookshelves where I have like some fantasy, horror, and kind of some occult stuff. So that sounded interesting. I'd never heard of it, but when I looked it up, it sounded good or interesting. Got Gordon R. Dixon, The Dragon, and the George. And this is either book 1 or book 2 of some dragon series. And I already had the other one, apparently. So now I have both books in that series. The Worm or Boreas by E.R. Edison. And I'd never heard of this book. This is really old. It's like from the 20s or something like that. And I looked it up. It's like some old fantasy. It's supposed to be halfway decent. And I recently did a video about the Moon Pool by A. Merritt. And someone on there left a comment that they said this is like the wordiest, most descriptive book they've ever read. So, and it's big. I don't know if I'm going to read that, but I'm going to hang on to it for now. And then The Crack in the Cosmic Egg by Joseph Chilton Pierce. And look this one up. This one is kind of interesting. It's, I think, like a nonfiction about some, challenging constructs of mind and reality. And so I looked that up. It sounded interesting. I don't know if I'll ever read it, but I'm going to keep it for now. And then Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Danken. This one is another like nonfiction, and it has to do with, I looked this up. I can't remember exactly, but it looked interesting enough that I wanted to keep it, even though there's a bit of a chunk missing there. And then Fred Saberhagen, The Broken Lands. This is another fantasy from what I could tell. So I'm kind of showing you some of the non-science fiction first that I'm going to keep out of this lot. Okay, now we're into the science fiction. I'll go through these pretty quick. There's a bunch of ones I don't really know what they're about. Biblings by Barbara Paul. So what I do is I usually, when I get these lots, this is from Signet. I'll look them up, and if they sound halfway decent, I will hang on to them, at least for the time being. The Screaming Face by John Limington. And sometimes I'll show these and people will say, hey, that book that you showed was pretty good. This is a McFadden. And so then that'll spark my interest a little bit more, and I might consider reading it sooner than later. The Blade Runner by Alan E. Norse. This is from Ballantine. Good condition here. Fritz Leiber, Ships to the Stars. I hadn't had this one. I pretty much will pick up anything from Fritz. Even the stuff that I'm not the biggest fan of is still good. The Stardust Voyages by Stephen Tall. And this one's from Berkeley. Nice shape there. Odd Science Fiction by Frank Belknap Long. This sounded pretty interesting. I think this is a compilation of a few different authors. And I am a fan of odd science fiction. Or maybe it's just him. Yeah, okay, this is not a compilation. This is just 3 little kind of novelettes, I believe, from him. Starburst by Phyllis Gottlieb. And this is a gold medal book from Fawcett. Okay, Horizon Alpha, Douglas R. Mason. Really neat cover there. This is a Ballantine. The Impossible World by Endo Binder. And I believe, I just heard someone talking about this person. I think it's 2 brothers that write under this pen name. I think Endo might be a combination of their names. The 27th Day by John Mantley. This is a Fawcett crest. John MacDonald, Ballroom of the Skies, another Fawcett. And the other thing I should mention, this was all from like a local collector. Almost every book had a stamp from our local bookstore, and even defunct bookstore that was called Bookhaven here in Helena. So some of them look like they were read by this collector, and some maybe just put on his shelf for decades. Missing Man by Catherine McLean. This is a Berkeley. The Arsenal Out of Time, David McDaniel. An Ace book here. Then we got a couple from Thomas Burnett Swan. The Forest of Forever. Got a really cool looking cover there. And I believe when I looked this one up, this was kind of a fantasy, if you could believe that. And then Lady of the Bees, which I think Richard over at Vintage SF just did a video on Thomas Burnett Swan, and I think this was one of the books that he talked about. H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. This is an old Berkeley Highlands, 50-cent copy, in pretty good shape for its age. I have a kind of a nicer, more collectible copy, but I'm probably going to keep that one too. And then Star Rider by Doris Pisercia, I think is how you pronounce her last name. Now this one, someone decided to use the back to jot down some notes, which I'm kind of bummed about. I've never read anything from Pisercia, but from what I've heard, she's a really good writer. Paul Anderson, Time and Stars. This is from McFadden Books. Not one of my favorite vintage publishers, but not bad. Agent of Terra number 3, The Emerald Elephant Gambit by Larry Murdoch. I was initially not going to keep this one, and then when I looked it up, there was something interesting enough. Maybe it was just the cover that I decided to hang on to it for now. Okay, now out of this lot, we're finally getting into some of the good ones. There was this giant stack of those Ace kind of miniature paperbacks. So let's go through these. Eric Frank Russell, Somewhere a Voice. I'm getting quite the collection of these smaller Ace. Well, this one's a Dell. Preferred Risk by Edson McCain, which when I looked this up, this was actually a pen name of Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth. And I have a different version of this book, Preferred Risk, that actually has their names on it. And then John W. Campbell, The Mightiest Machine. Recently read that collection of Campbell short stories. You know, I guess I'd give him another try maybe with something, but his writing just didn't really engage me as a reader much. Rogue Queen by L. Sprague de Camp. I believe this is the first printing of this one. I have a signet edition of this one that's in really good shape and has a cool cover. But I think this was the very first edition that came out. Doomsday Morning by C.L. Moore. Excited about this one. This was, I believe this is an Avon book that was issued at 35 cents, but it still is kind of like that small form factor. Guess the rest are Ace now. Keith Laumer, Worlds of the Imperium. We got Andre Norton, Cat's Eye. Kind of a cool cover there. Rex Dean Levy, The Insect Warriors. And I think I might have seen Jake from Pulp Mortem pull this book out recently, or some other book that had to do with insects. Rex Gordon, First Through Time. So this is another little small Rex Gordon that I got. Gardner F. Fox, The Hunter Out of Time. Then we got Keith Woodcock, The Martian Sphinx. And unfortunately, someone wrote 40 cents and then scratched it out of this on this one. But other than that, it's pretty nice and crisp. Poul Anderson, War of the Winged Men. Kind of excited about this one. And the last one out of this one is Fritz Leiber, The Big Time, which I'm going to be reading. This is the next Leiber I'm going to be reading. I had like a normal format Ace, a reprint. It did have a little waviness to it, but this is the first original edition of it in novel form, from what I can tell. Okay, now on to the kind of the most excited out of this lot that I was excited for. So Agents of Chaos by Norman Spinrad. This one has a little bit of a crease on the cover, but this was a Belmont science fiction issued at 50 cents. Greybeard by Brian Aldiss. This is from Signet. The Sword Swallower by Ron Goulart. Gotta love that title. Gotta love the cover, the art. And then Margaret St. Clair, Change the Sky and Other Stories. From what I can tell, Margaret St. Clair was a pretty good writer of short stories. I don't even know if she wrote many novels. But I haven't read anything from her yet that I can remember. And so glad to get that. Jack Vance, Showboat World. This one is a pyramid science fiction book. The Gamesman by Barry Ann Malzberg. This is from Pocket Books. This one was in really good shape. The Falling Astronauts by Malzberg. From Ace. Ursula K. Le Guin, Rocannon's World. I already had this one, this same copy from Ace, but this one is in a lot better shape, so I think I'm going to switch that out. Then I got The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is a book I read early on in the channel, and all I had was like a reprint trade paperback, so really happy to have this Fawcett Crest edition. I really like the book. And then one of the main books that I was most excited about in this lot was the original first U.S. paperback of Voyage to Arcturus by David Lindsay. This is one that I've been interested in for a while. It's in really good shape, and it's probably worth, I don't know how much, probably half of what I paid for the whole lot of books. Okay, now I'm just going to show you a few more things that I picked up from other sources. Some of these books I want to be kind of reading soon. So we got The Positronic Man by Asimov and Silverberg. This is a short story that Isaac Asimov wrote, and then Silverberg expanded it into a novel. Then I was missing a couple of these Year's Best by David Hartwell. I was missing 14. So I got that one, and then 15. And 15 does have a little bit of a crease, but I think now I have 1 through 16 of all of the Year's Best by David Hartwell. And then I picked up The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This was one I found for real cheap, and all I had was like this compilation leather-bound thing of the entire Hitchhikers, but I really wanted kind of one of the original U.S. paperbacks. This is pretty old pocketbook edition. It's not a first printing, it's a 10th printing. This book got into the however many printings, and they've changed all the styles, but I believe if you get the first edition, it looks exactly like this. It just has a lower cover price. Okay, last stack here, and then we're done. The Best of Poul Anderson. This is kind of the best of series, part of the best of series that Pocketbooks did. I've got all the Ballantine, Del Rey best ofs. And so I've been kind of looking to find some of complete my collection of the Pocketbooks ones. And then Joanna Russ, Picnic on Paradise. This is an Ace Science Fiction special. This is the next Russ that I want to read probably pretty soon. It's a pretty short read at 160 pages, so look for that one next. And then The Sky is Filled with Ships by Richard C. Meredith. I recently read We All Died at Breakaway Station, really liked it, and I believe this book is even slightly more popular, and that's probably going to be the next Meredith book that I read. Then Half Past Human by T.J. Bass. Got a really interesting cover here on this Ballantine copy I got. And it's just got a perfect spine on it. This one sounds interesting. Matt from Vintage SF recently got a different copy of that one. And yeah, so I have to read that. I think the sequel to that one is God Whale, which has an awesome cover too. Then I got a few Philip K. Dicks here. We got Radio Free Albemuth. This is from Avon. Really good shape on this one. Definitely not red. And then this was Philip K. Dick with Ray Nelson, The Ganymede Takeover by Ace. Did not have this one yet, and once again, really good shape. And then I'm really excited about this one. Got this one online for $13, and that included shipping. It's Galactic Pot Healer. And this is the first US paperback from Berkeley. And it's one of those ones that I'd almost call it like near fine or fine condition because it's so crisp, so unread. I mean, there's a little bit of discoloring around the edges, but other than that, I mean, it could be a book you just picked up recently, brand new. Then we got Clifford Simic, Ring Around the Sun. This one's from Avon. In my quest to complete my collection of all the Clifford Simic books. And then this one, I've been hunting for this one for a while. Finally got this. I paid a little bit more than I'm used to paying. I think it was like $10. Cosmic Engineers. And this is from Paperback Library. This is the true first US paperback edition of this book, issued at 50 cents. So that's it. That's a big haul. I'm going to load these up on the shelves. And I think I'm probably looking for around November, October, November. I'm probably have most of my shelves here mostly filled and do a bookshelf tour of where we're sitting at the moment. And then I have another option to expand if I need to. So just keep an eye out for that video coming out sometime in the future. And once again, thanks for watching.